Perfect. So as always, if you have a question, feel free to ask it. We will be stopping at certain points, so you can ask a more pointed question. Also, at any time, you can, if you're like me and you forget your questions as you're going along, you can just type it in the chat, and then Mary or myself will see that, and then we'll try and find a good spot to slip that in. If you notice me looking over, it's because I'm using a second monitor, which for most meeting services, I really recommend. So at least if you're hosting. So this is a class on virtual meetings. And we're going to first go over Zoom, primarily because it's almost become the verb of what a virtual meeting is, as much as Microsoft and Google and definitely Skype are annoyed by that. We briefly discussed it, but one of the annoying things about kind of showing off Zoom is that if you're using Zoom, you can't share your screen and show Zoom. All of the Zoom panels are hidden. So on the one hand, that's a very nice feature. On the other hand, it's kind of annoying for specific circumstances such as this. Zoom is very popular with schools and businesses. So it's oftentimes what you'll be using if you're meeting with a client, or you have a company that wants to do a web conference with you, or if you're just trying to figure out what your kid is doing and how to help them with their school setup from home if they need to be home these days. As always, we will be giving you a link to these slides, and you can have a recording of the conversation of this talk in video format as well. So I do have links in these presentations that will be updated from time to time. So you can come back, use this link, come back, and then click on one of these, and you can get to kind of an informational page that'll help you remember what you were trying to remember. The first one is just a Zoom support article on how to join a meeting. The second link is just the general Zoom support page. And the third is actually a YouTube video on how to join a meeting. So if anyone wants, once we're all done, we can go through kind of the individual links, but I like to kind of get through as much material as possible before we go back, just because I know some people have time constraints with how much time they can spend on these classes. As I stated before, unfortunately, we can't show you Zoom while using Zoom. So I believe Mary put together these images from our last class. I checked, nothing's really changed. So we're using the same ones again. Basically, if you're joining a meeting, there are two different ways to do it. Well, there's more than two, but there's two main ways to do it. One is for you to open up Zoom and then type in the meeting ID or personal link name. So that'll be a copy paste from an email that someone will send you, or generally in the email for the Zoom invite link, you'll just be able to click on that. It will open up a web page, and then it'll just open up Zoom automatically and join you into the meeting. So if people want, they can also put in a meeting password. If you click on the link that you've gotten in your email or calendar invite, it will most times automatically have the password appended to that, so you won't actually need to see that screen. But if you're joining through the join a meeting dialog, you will need to type in the password. Once you've joined a meeting, depending on the person who set up the meeting's preferences, you'll either have to wait for the host to start the meeting, or you'll just be let directly in. So basically, as soon as you've clicked the link and get to the please wait for the host to start this meeting dialog box, you've done everything you need to do. The only thing I would also recommend you do is if you look on that left-hand side where it says, please wait for the host to start this meeting, just below that, it says test computer audio. I notice a lot of people sometimes have issues where either one, they don't know they're muted, or two, they join and just audio isn't working or video isn't working. you can use the test computer audio button to make sure your audio is working so you can hear things and be heard before actually joining the meeting, and then having to fumble around where it's a little bit more difficult to act under pressure. So once you've joined the meeting, it will ask you to join with computer audio. What this means is basically it's asking if you want the audio to run through your computer. If you don't have good audio, or if you want to listen to it on your phone, there is a phone call option, which you can see on the right-hand side, which will show you the numbers to dial to get into this meeting. And then it will show you the meeting ID, which you will then need to use the number pad on your phone to connect to, and then the password. So just be aware that if all else fails, you can join a Zoom meeting and still see everything, and then also join it with the phone call so you can hear stuff if your computer is acting up. Once you're in the meeting, on the bottom left-hand side, you'll notice two icons. There's the microphone icon, which has mute underneath it, and there's the start video icon, or the video icon, which has an old school camera type look to it. What this will allow you to do is it will allow you to set up what device your audio is coming out of and what device your audio is getting inputted from. So if you're using a laptop, generally you don't have to really think about this. There's not that many options. But as you notice on this example we're showing you, there are multiple options. So under microphone, I have microphone array, Realtek audio, and I have headset microphone. So what that means is if you swear you're connected to audio, but you can't either hear or be heard, just make sure to click the little up arrow near the microphone icon and select the correct device. This has happened where you'll join a Zoom meeting, it'll work great. You'll then join another Zoom meeting and all of a sudden nothing's working. And most likely it's because the microphone or the speaker is misselected. Windows especially can do some weird things with audio where it will reset the default device. So if you have like an external speaker setup or an external camera even, it'll kind of reset it to something that you're not actually using. As you can see to the right of the mute icon, there's the video icon. And if you click the up arrow on that, it's a very similar set of options. Now, in this option, if you see at the bottom, it says audio settings, you can join audio, you can click on that and get to the audio settings. So these are kind of the more advanced settings that you can go through. In here, you can test your speaker, make sure if the speaker you have selected is actually playing audio. So I have run into this a couple times where someone on the other end doesn't have their microphone set up properly. So they think you should be able to hear them. You're not hearing them and you think it's your fault, but it's actually their fault. So if you go into audio settings, you can then test your own speaker to make sure that you're doing things correctly. Just like with the speaker, you can test the microphone. What this does is you hit the test mic button, you speak into it for like 2 seconds, and then it will then replay what you've said. One of the nice things about that is it will also let you know how loud you are. So you can change that volume slider just in case you're a naturally loud person or you're a naturally soft-spoken person, just to make sure you're not deafening the other people, and also making sure that you're not speaking too quietly so you can't be heard. For example, in the other room on my other computer, apparently I could sound like the voice of God coming from the ceiling tile speaker that they have. So I actually had to go in and manually reduce my microphone volume because I was too loud in that room. The other button I like to have checked, you can kind of see it here, is the press and hold space key to temporarily unmute yourself. And then right above it, there is the mute my microphone when joining a meeting. Clearly, you can see that Mary or myself, probably Mary, doesn't have this selected, the mute my microphone when joining a meeting. But I really like this, mainly because a lot of times people will join a meeting and then kind of forget the audio is a thing, and they'll have their dog barking in the background, or they'll, be talking with someone else. So you can't really know what sound is going to be in the background for you whenever you join a call. But if you just have it mute from the start, then you manually have to unmute it, so you're not going to say anything inappropriate. And then, yeah.
Sorry, we have a question in the classroom.
Sure.
Could you demonstrate the ability to test your microphone? You said hit the icon. You mean hit test mic? I'd like to see you do that.
I'd love to be able to show you, but I can't. Because with Zoom, whenever you are using Zoom, you can't actually show Zoom windows, which is why we have the pictures. But if we end up doing a Zoom specific class, if enough people want it, we will basically run the class in not a Zoom call, and then we'll be able to show you all of these things and how they work.
And I can show her after the class.
See, I've never seen this screen before.
Yeah, not very many people go into the settings. And then the reason why I like the press and hold space to temporarily unmute yourself is just because that way you can leave yourself muted the entire time, and you just internally will know, if I want to talk, I hold the space bar. That way you don't have to manually unmute yourself, mute yourself, unmute yourself, mute yourself whenever you're talking. That's a really important thing, especially if you're not the main person in the meeting. Because again, sometimes you'll unmute yourself, forget about it, and then you'll be having a conversation in the background, or traffic will be going by, or there's a dog barking, and you won't be aware that your mic is on until someone lets you know. So next is the video controls. So again, right now you can see in the bottom left that there is a red line through the start video icon. And all that means is that video is not being shown. So if you ever want to, sneeze or get up from the computer, you can stop your video so people can't see you. If you have multiple cameras connected to your computer, it's pretty rare, but it does happen. You can hit the up arrow and you can select the correct camera. Notably, if you ever want to use a library meeting room and you are plugged into the system, you will now have two options for your camera. So if you're ever doing that, make sure that you're selecting the correct video. If you hit the settings button, then you come to this screen. So basically, just like with the audio, it gives you more options. So you can see that there is a big black square or rectangle of what everyone else is going to see. And then you also have the options for changing the camera. Generally, you'll only have the one option, but again, if you're using something like the library meeting room, you will have multiple options. If you are ever having a tough time or a shaky connection, one thing you can do is you can deselect Enable HD and deselect Touch Up My Appearance. Both of those take more bandwidth. So if your internet connection isn't great, by turning those two off, you should make the meeting run smoother. This will also, so sometimes you'll notice that, the video may work, but the audio is a little choppy. Turning off those options should make the audio better. Mary put in the chat that Touch Up My Appearance is a favorite. And it is really nice.
I lost connection.
Somebody is unmuted. Could we Until you have a question, you mind if everyone mutes so we don't hear feedback? Thanks.
And that's one of the nice things about one of the previous slides we went over, which is the always be muted and then the space bar. It sounds like that was a little bit of feedback, but it happens. Touch up my appearance. Basically all that does is it softens your face, and it, gives you a little bit of a glow. So you look like you're more tan than you are. Zoom also has some advanced things you can do. Like you can add hats to yourself. You can add eyeglasses. You can add facial tattoos because, that's really in vogue. So you can do a lot of things with Zoom, but that would be we'd talk about that more if we had a class specifically on Zoom. The other nice thing I want to point out is at the very bottom, it says hide non-video participants. It doesn't really matter here, but if you're in a video call and there are a ton of people and you want to see as many people as possible, you can click on the hide non-video participants so you only see people with images. Because if someone has no video but is speaking, you'll still see a black screen, which will make all of the people with actual images smaller. So you can always turn that off so you'll only see people with video turned on. Under advanced, I believe, so bottom right, advanced, you have these options. Basically, don't worry about it. We'll go over that in the real Zoom class if we want that. But generally, you want all of these enabled, and you just want everything set to auto. One important thing, and I mess this up all the time, is if you are typing in a Zoom group chat and you only want to type to a single person, please make sure that you have that selected. So right now, you can kind of see in the bottom left or bottom right, there's to everyone. If you click on that, you can select everyone in the meeting, and then you can select individual people. Also, please be aware that the person managing the meeting will see your chat no matter what at the end of the meeting. So for, primarily for teachers, I wouldn't really worry about it, but if kids are, messaging each other privately back and forth and they think they're being sneaky, they're not, because the teacher will be able to see all of those messages afterwards. Oh, also, if you have typing selected to a single person and then you send another message, it will save whatever your setting was. So if you do a private message to someone and then you want to send a message to everyone, you will have to reselect the everyone in the meeting option. If you are the host of the meeting, you'll see a screen like this whenever you're starting the meeting, if you have the waiting room selected. So for example, the Peterborough Town Library has a waiting room option turned on, which basically means that people can join the meeting and be connected, but be put into a waiting room to wait until the time is right, until the 1 o'clock time period rolls around. So it also allows us to do things like on Tech Drop-In on Wednesdays. Everyone can join the meeting, and then individually people will be let into the meeting from the waiting room. So it's a one-on-one instead of having everyone in there and then asking certain people to, mute, or if just anyone's uncomfortable with discussing their issue or talking with more than just one person in the room. Another option.
Where is the waiting room option? Where do you find it?
The waiting room option is if you're hosting a meeting or starting a meeting, you'll be able to turn on or off the waiting room. So it's not something you'll see right now because you're not the host. But we can definitely go over it if people want like a strictly Zoom class. And I can also show you kind of at the end of this, I can show you guys how to set up a meeting online and some of the different options that you can select. If you're the host, you have the ability to mute all participants on entry. Basically what that means is, again, if whenever people come in, they may not realize that their audio is on, and they may be talking in the background or something to that effect. It allows you to basically say everyone who joins this meeting joins muted. So people have to remember to unmute themselves in order to talk. You can also see on this mute all option, there's enable waiting room. So once you're in the meeting as a host, if you want or you don't want a waiting room, you can turn that on or off. This is the screen sharing option if you're the host. So by default, only one participant can share at a time and only the host can share their screen. So basically, if you're the host and you want other people to be able to share their screen, you want to select the all participants option. Likewise, if you're in a Zoom meeting and you're trying to share your screen and you can't, it's because the host hasn't enabled it. If you're the host in the participants tab and you can tell someone is either muted or they have their video turned off, you can click on them and you can ask them to start the video. You can ask them to unmute themselves, and you can also do things like put them in the waiting room or lots of options. But probably the biggest thing is for a while there, you could do what was called Zoom bombing, which was essentially put in a random meeting ID, join the meeting, and then people would say not nice things or try and take over the meeting, and the host is able to click on their name and remove them. So this is also where you go to kick someone out of a meeting, which isn't as needed anymore, but for a while it was a very big thing. Once you're done with the meeting, if you notice, there are a couple of options. So if you're the host and you end the meeting, you can either end meeting for all or you can leave the meeting. Now, the differences are that if you end meeting for all, which is the red button, the meeting ends and everyone gets kicked out. If you want the meeting, if you're the host and you want the meeting to continue, but you just want to leave, you can hit leave meeting, and then you will exit the meeting, but everyone else can still stay and talk. So this may be useful. Maybe useful for more in like a classroom setting or in a presentation setting where you've done your part, you hosted the meeting because you're the one with the paid Zoom account, and then you can leave the meeting and let everyone else do what they need to do in the meeting. And Mary said, and that's a good point, that once someone is removed from a meeting, they then can't join back in, which is nice in that they can't then rejoin and cause havoc. But it's also occasionally annoying because you may accidentally remove someone and then they can't join the meeting again. So just be careful. So that was the end of the Zoom part, or at least that Zoom part. Does anyone have any questions about Zoom? Or does anyone want to say that they would want a more Zoom specific class, because Mary will take that information down and make me do one of those in the future, if that's the case.
Yes, we want that.
I would like to have a specific class on Zoom.
I would as well.
Great,
Great. Sounds like we should make it happen, Tim.
wonderful, wonderful.
Perfect. And the fun thing with the Zoom class is we can also take a poll at the end and people can decide what other option they want to use to do the Zoom meeting. So the next one we're going to talk about is Google Meet. So we briefly went over why someone would use Zoom, and in essence, it boils down to because everyone else is using Zoom. Zoom honestly came out of nowhere and became absolutely number one, primarily because at the start of the pandemic, their free version was already out there. And then they bumped it up to unlimited meeting time, which basically made everyone use it. So as soon as everyone was using it, they turned off the ability to have the unlimited meetings. And then people were so used to using Zoom that they stuck with it. So that's the reason why you would use Zoom, is it's pretty much everyone at this point knows primarily how to use it. And also because it's so large now that if you have an issue, you can always search for kind of a video on how to use it and you'll generally find it. However, there are other options besides Zoom, and one of those is Google Meet. And the main reason why you would use Google Meet is if you have a Gmail account, because you already have access to Google Meet, and it is a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit simpler than Zoom. And it's also incredibly easy to use, especially if the other person and yourself both have Google Gmail accounts, which a lot of people do nowadays. Once again, we have some links on the right-hand side that you can click on. And if you ever used Google Hangouts, Google basically killed Google Hangouts and switched to Google Meet. The first post is just the meet.google.com landing page. And the second post is the blog where Google describes the transition and what they're doing for the future of Google Meet. Just so I don't have to go into a browser and show you right now, we can definitely go into a browser later and I can show you some of the Google stuff. But immediately you can see from this screenshot, you can see that Google Meet is a lot more bare bones than Zoom. In video, in comparison to Zoom, you have a lot less options. So you have the option to change what camera you're coming from, and you have the option to change the send resolution and the receive resolution, which is really nice. So basically what that means is if you're in a call in Google Meet and you're having audio or video problems where it's getting choppy, if you are the one presenting, you can keep your send resolution at auto and you can put your receive resolution at the minimum option. What that allows you to do is reduce the amount of internet you're using to receive other people's images, but still allow other people to see yourself in beautiful, beautiful HD. So that can be useful, having those two things separated. And the audio panel looks a whole lot like Zoom, except it's pared down just like this. But basically the only thing that Google has that Zoom doesn't is the ability to select the send versus the receive resolution option. The next thing is FaceTime. So a lot of people have been using FaceTime for a lot of years. It's a Apple specific product or application. And the reason to use FaceTime is if you have an iPhone. One of the things that Apple did with the latest update in, I believe, 13, you can now send a FaceTime invite to people who don't have iPhones, which is very nice, which essentially means that now people can easily join from their Android phone, and they can also join from their Windows PC. So one of the main limitations of FaceTime was just that it was purely Apple to Apple. Now you can use it from an Apple device to start it to anybody. So it's actually really nice. It's a really kind of straightforward program. One of the things Apple does very well, in my opinion, is the user experience is very straightforward. And it just works is kind of the tagline for that. Again, we have two different links in this page. The first one is, I believe, how to kind of use FaceTime on your iPhone. And the second link is how to send an invite to people who don't have iPhones, which is a massive change and a big shift for Apple. Oh, yep. And it also works on iPad. The next option is kind of other. So we have Zoom, we have Google Meet, and we have FaceTime. If you are concerned about privacy, Zoom is not the one you want to use. It is by far has been in the news the most for people breaking into meetings, for just meetings not being secure in general. These ones are purportedly the more secure, but I would definitely say that FaceTime is up there in terms of security. One of the important things to remember, and this is a little pontificating, but one of the important things to remember is that Apple doesn't make money selling ads. So they don't have real skin in the game as far as, you know, trying to get as much information from you as possible. They sell you the device, you use the device, they're happy. You come back in 2 to 3 years, you buy a new device, they're happy. With Google specifically, or things like WhatsApp, because of the Facebook integration, they are also interested in your information so that they can sell your ads to other people. So if you are concerned about security, these are generally the ones to go for, with a caveat about WhatsApp because it has Facebook integration. This is older. I believe this is from 2019. I did check it and it is still applicable. So if you want to have the most secure kind of meeting experience, then you would use Signal. So in this graph, in this little chart thing, image, it's asking the question, what data does each app collect from your phone? So the answer for Signal is nothing. The only thing that Signal collects is your phone number. And your phone number is what Signal uses to basically know it's you. So you are your phone number. So for example, you can get a random phone number and use Signal, and they won't know your name, your address, your location, your age, your gender, anything like that. With Telegram, it will know your contact info, contacts, and user ID. And then WhatsApp is just pretty much anything it can get its grubby little hands on. It will try and know. Now, I don't want to say that an application knowing all this information is a bad thing, because it can be incredibly useful. So for example, if you're using Signal and you're trying to send somebody an invite to Signal, the application Signal itself won't know who's in your contact list. You then have to copy the meeting invite, send it, or have a separate Signal contact list. With WhatsApp, you have access to your Facebook friends, you have access to your email friends, you have access to your friends who you just have their phone number. So you'll be able to send it to anybody relatively easily. Just if you want security, Signal and Telegram are a little bit better. However, not as many people use it, so it's always an uphill battle. Here's another little thing about the security. WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. It is default end-to-end encryption. If anyone wants to know what that means, I can go over it later. And you can use it on a single device. Signal, it's run by a nonprofit, default end-to-end. The owners are Moxie and Brian Acton, and it's multi-device, which means essentially you can have Signal on your phone, you can have Signal on your iPad, you can have Signal on your computer, and you can switch between the three interchangeably. Telegram is private. It offers secret chats. So by default, it's not end-to-end encrypted, but it does offer the ability to have end-to-end encrypted communication. It is owned by a Russian billionaire, in case that worries you at all. And it is multi-device, just like Signal. The next option we're going to go over is one of my, like, I guess you could say it's a dark horse, or my favorite, or the thing I find adorable because it's still out there trying so hard, is Jitsi. Jitsi is essentially a free open source video conferencing platform. It doesn't really do anything better than any of the options we've talked about. I just like it because it's not owned by a larger corporation. So for its links, I have, a link to what is Jitsi, like why should you use it? And I also have a link to the Wirecutter review on where Wirecutter, which is bought by the New York Times, kind of goes over their favorite video conferencing solutions. Ironically, when I was going to update this slide, Jitsi is no longer on their top recommended option. They give you 2 options. It's no longer one of those, but I still gave you the link just because I think it's an important link that you can see, what someone other than myself thinks is the top option in this space. Also, you'll see Jitsi is used by a lot of companies as their back end, and they will rebrand it. So things like Webex, things like 8x8, they've actually bought licensing from Jitsi to use their technology in order to create their own platform. So, one of the questions was just asking about Webex. So I believe Webex, unless something has changed in the past year, is built on the Jitsi platform. So it works well. All of these options work well. Generally, if you know how to use one of the options, you'll be able to use or fumble your way through any of them. None of them are really reinventing the wheel here. And there's only so many ways you can change what, a microphone icon looks like. Once you know one, you can kind of figure out the rest. The main thing is that things like Webex, things like Jitsi, things like Zoom are kind of more built for the ability to scale. And by scale, I mean have meetings with 100+ participants. Like, you're not going to have a FaceTime conversation with 30 people. It's not what FaceTime's for. It's not realistic. But the other options are more, are built to have that back end to handle a conference. So to handle a ton of people, to have a waiting room where you can go into breakout rooms or discussion groups. So yeah, all of them do similar things, but some of them are definitely better for larger events. One question was, other than Zoom, can you record a meeting? What's the question in there? Yes.
So the question is, can you, for example, we're recording this meeting and we can send out the recording, but can you do the same thing on Telegram or Jitsi or any of or FaceTime?
Jitsi, you can record the meeting. You can also save the chat transcript, all that fun stuff. FaceTime, I don't believe you're able to record. Someone can definitely correct me if I'm wrong. Signal, Telegram, I don't think by default you can record. And on Google Meet, I believe you can, but you need to be, need to have a license for it. I don't think in the free version you can record. But as always, if you're doing it on your computer, you can just record using your computer, which is what I recommend anyway, because it's generally a higher quality recording.
Can he hear me
Yeah.
speak? I run a meeting of about 20, 25 persons, and we need to Zoom. I'm interested in, you said, multiple cameras. Please explain that option and what that does for you.
Sure. So basically, in the room you're in right now, I'm actually going to stop my screen share for a little bit.
why don't I show her from the classroom? So
Yeah.
right now, we're on this camera that's above the screen. If I go down here to video, I can choose integrated webcam. And now it's only me and it's the camera that is in my computer. Does that make sense? You have to see it on my computer. 'Cause it's-
Well, I see you're highlighted there with the yellow ruler around you.
Right, but if I select, see right here, I can select, I have two cameras to select from. If I select Unite 150, it goes to this camera up here and shows the whole room. So that's what he's talking about with multiple cameras.
Oh, either a close-up or a broad view, way out. right?
Only if you have that camera in the room.
Oh, well, we wouldn't have any camera like that,
Okay.
that's high tech, you know? You would be needing a place that doesn't have a camera. Mm-mm.
So I want to make a pitch for Signal. I love Signal. I have a daughter in Australia, a stepdaughter in Switzerland. Signal works really beautifully. Plus, you do not have with WhatsApp, you have to link your phone to your laptop if you want to use the laptop to have a meeting, which I think is a pain in the neck. With Signal, as Tim said, you have multiple devices, so you can just use it on your laptop, which also helps from having to use my fat fingers to type on my phone, which doesn't work very well. And the other thing too is it's been very, very reliable and it's also very private. So I'm totally down with Signal.
And I believe I am a little bit biased, but I like Signal more than Telegram.
Mhm.
And I just don't like WhatsApp just because of the Facebook aspect of it. You will notice Signal has been in the news. It's in the news pretty much every year for negative reasons. But if you read into it, those negative reasons are because it's being used by not very nice groups of people because it's so secure, which is like a good and a bad thing.
Also, they just recently said you can have 40 people in a meeting. So not that you'd want to, but which helps too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I do want to give a quick shout out to FaceTime. FaceTime allows you to play interactive games with each other, which some people find interesting during the pandemic. I tried them, they're okay. But if you're looking for something to do, you can try the FaceTime games. So basically, I'm cool with people asking questions. I can also I can show you guys how to set up a Zoom meeting using the web application, if you guys want.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. So I'll just need to drag the screens to their respective area. And share screen. All right, everyone able to see this? All right, so basically all I've done is I've gone to zoom.us and signed in. So that's the only thing I've done. This is also a free Zoom license. So I don't have as many options as the paid ones, but the real limitation for the free Zoom license is the limit to the length of the meeting, not the options. All right. So on the left-hand side, you can see you can click on your profile. This is the information that you have put in that people can see about you in Zoom. Then there's meetings, webinars, recordings, settings, and then all these things down here that we're not going to talk about. So meetings versus webinars. Why would you want to do a meeting versus a webinar? Well, generally, whenever you're using Zoom, you'll want to use Zoom meetings. Webinars are more for massive amounts of people. And what webinars allow you to do is to have, easily 100+ people, thousands of people, up to, let's see, 10,000 attendees. And what it allows you to do is just separate people into groups. So you can say, these 5 people are going to be the presenters. So they automatically are able to be seen with a webcam. They automatically get additional privileges. And then these, 5,000 people are going to be are going to just join and be a participant and not actually they won't have the ability to speak. They won't have the ability to unmute themselves. They won't have the ability to do a lot, but they can, ask text questions if you allow them. Basically, it's meetings with a whole bunch of added ability. And if you're wondering if you need to use a webinar or not, you probably don't need to. It's one of those things where if you need it to use it, you kind of know you need to use it. So we're going to talk about meetings. So as you can see, if you log into your Zoom account, and this will also, you can also do this on the app. It's just if I do it on the app, I can't show you. You can see that we have this meeting selected and I have no upcoming meetings. You can go to your previous meeting. So you can see the meetings that you've run in the past. You can look at your personal room. So basically what this allows you to do is this allows you to, at the drop of a hat, just create a meeting with your personal room. Your personal room information will not change unless you want it to. So basically what this means, if you've sent an invite to somebody with your personal room, you can just say, hey, click on my personal room again, and you'll be brought in to this exact room. So it's just kind of a nice default that you can have. So what you can do is upcoming, schedule a meeting. Click on this, and then here's where you put in all of the relevant information. The topic, so this is going to be the title of the meeting. So you just type in whatever the meeting's going to be called. You can add a description, so you can kind of say, like, in this meeting, we will go over X, Y, and Z. You select the date. So this is going to be for next Tuesday at 3:00 p.m. The duration will be 2 hours and 0 minutes. As you can see, because I'm using Zoom Basic, I have a 40-minute time limit on meetings with 3 or more participants. So obviously it would cut me off at 40 minutes, but I can still set it up just fine. Your time zone, make sure you select the correct time zone. If for some reason you have like Pacific time here, everything else gets messed up. Reoccurring meeting. So what this means is if this is a meeting that you want every week, you can select it every week on Tuesday, and you can select the end date. So kind of if you have like a touch base, or if you have a family Zoom call or something like that, what you can do is you can make it reoccurring. Now, you may ask yourself, why would I want to make it reoccurring? Well, the benefit of reoccurring is all the meeting ID and passwords and stuff will be the same. So if someone has one of them, they will then be able to click on that and join into the next week's meeting very easily. The other reason why it's very nice is if you're running late to a meeting by like half an hour and it's like a family Zoom call. Apparently these are very popular. My in-laws do a family Zoom call, I think every other week. Basically what this allows you to do is even if you're not going to be in the call that week, you've still already scheduled it and everyone else can be in the call. So this requires no interaction with you to set up or moderate or anything like that. It'll just let the meeting happen and everyone can join. Template. So basically what a template is you can set up kind of a default set of actions, and you can just select, okay, this is my, family meeting. This is my work meeting, and you can just have different templates set up. Passcode. So you can change this if you want. and you can enable the waiting room. One thing to be careful of is if you're doing a thing like I just talked about with the family, if you enable waiting room and you don't show up, then people are going to be stuck in the waiting room unless you've selected a alternate admin for the group. Video host participant. So you can turn these on or off. And this is just going to be the default. So you can select, you can change it later. And then you have the options to allow participants to join anytime. What that also means is if someone is 5 minutes early to the meeting, they can join the meeting. The mute participants on entry, we talked about that previously. You can set it to automatically record the meeting, so you don't have to do that thing that Mary does where you select, where you turn it on and then everyone gets that this meeting's being recorded message, whenever she starts recording. And this option isn't as useful anymore, but you can approve or block entry to users from specific regions or countries. So if you know that no one from Russia is going to be joining your Zoom call, you can block Russia, for example. Once you hit save, the meeting will start. The meeting will be scheduled. So this meeting will now be on my calendar, on my Zoom calendar, all 7 occurrences until March 8th, 2022. And I can add it to whatever calendar I want. I can also copy the invitation and send it to somebody. I can basically do whatever I want with this meeting. If I scroll to the bottom, you can also see that I have the option to save this as a template. So if I want to save these set of options as a template, so it's very easy for me to duplicate this, I can do that. And then I can just kind of create it from a template over and over again. Were there any, I kind of blazed through that, but that's basically how you would set up a meeting and what it looks like for the different options. The important thing to remember is if you're going to be in the meeting yourself, then all of the options are things that you can change once you're in the meeting. So don't worry too much about getting this right. Just worry about getting the time right. Any questions on that? Did I blaze through any of that particularly fast that someone needs to double up on?
So it's a simple thing. You just go on zoom.com and then follow the links, right?
Yep, zoom.us. You just click on meetings and it's kind of like, it's one of those things where you can kind of just think about it for a second and the options should make sense, especially after you've gone over it once. But basically you would just copy the invitation and send it to people, or you can click on one of these links and add it to your calendar and then send out the calendar invite. There's a lot of different options, and Zoom has made it fairly straightforward.
These are the training modules over here: Zoom Learning Center, attend those things, video tutorials.
Yep.
Okay.
And Zoom's pretty good about, I'll open it in a new tab. Zoom's pretty good about, having relevant and easy to access tutorials and how-tos. So Zoom Learning Center, I can just search for, how to mute. And then I can kind of see what courses would have information about muting to click on.
Wow.
So if I was interested in, learning about Zoom rooms, so that would be for, a larger group of people, that'd be more for a webinar. I can learn that. Zoom security basics, so, how to be more secure. So Zoom, the meetings are very, or the tutorials in the Learning Center are pretty well done, and they're fairly straightforward. And generally, if you have an issue, you're able to find the solution in here. And a lot of them are free. You do have to pay for some of them, but basically anything that you'll need will be free. The one thing I will discuss or talk about for a minute or two is just the recordings tab. So if you record these to the cloud, so if you record through Zoom, not to your computer, your recordings will show up here. So your recordings will essentially, you know, have a recording of the meeting of a video file format. It will also record the chat. And then from here, if you want, you can share it with people. You can also then from here, send it to YouTube or something to that effect. So if you're doing a, like if you're having a meeting with a group where you want to save the meetings for, you know, archival purposes, or the ability to have people who weren't a part of the meeting see and catch up on what was said in the meeting, just record it to the Zoom cloud, quote unquote, and then you can send them the link so they can see it before the next meeting and kind of get up to speed, which I think is kind of important. I'll take like 3 minutes to wait to see if anyone has questions. After that, I'll start a brief, so around like 2:05, I'll start a brief quick look at like various things you can buy to make your web meeting experience a little bit better. So definitely feel free to ask questions. I'll answer questions for as long as you want. And then after the questions are asked and answered, if you're not interested in learning about like things you can buy, because realistically you don't really need to spend money. If you're a participant mostly, then feel free to drop off and get access to the recording and the slides afterwards. But definitely if anyone has any questions, we can go through it. What does SCORM mean? Great question. I have no idea. I think that was in the Zoom Learning Center, right? SCORM. So I'm just going to Google it. No.
It was when you were doing the other ones, and it was an alternative to free. Some of them were Scorm and some were free.
Shareable content object reference model. Oh. So I guess it's just like a how to set up an e-learning thing. So I don't really know.
And Tim, if you have never used Zoom before, they are going to ask you to download some software. Is that not true?
Yeah, so with Zoom, if you don't have the application on your computer or your phone, it will prompt you to download them. You don't have to, but it will basically ask you to download the application. Also, whenever you click on a link to a meeting, it will ask you to open it in the application. You will have, if you don't want to use the application, if you just want to use it on the web, on your web browser, you'll have to click an option for that to basically say, I want to use Zoom online instead of using it in an application. Generally, your experience will be a little bit better if you use Zoom as an application, but it's a little bit simpler if you use Zoom in your web browser. So if you're having problems doing stuff in your application of Zoom, you can always join using your web browser and see if that fixes it.
How can we access the recording of this session afterwards?
Mary will basically be getting the recording. She will then upload it to the library YouTube page, and she will also send everyone out who is a part of this class. She'll send an email out with links to the recording and the slides after the recording's been posted.
Perfect.
I think I got that process right.
Yes, you did. And that's why we encourage everyone to register. Otherwise, I don't know the email addresses I need to send the materials out to. So thank you all for registering. And I guess, Tim, we're probably ready to move on to equipment.
Sure. Okay. Again, feel free to leave if you don't want to know about equipment, or stay because you like the sound of my voice. So let's just make sure that I'm on the right slide. So if anyone has any questions about the gear, if anyone has any kind of questions about, well, should I buy this or this? Always feel free to ask me. Also feel free to send Mary an email. She will let me know, and then I can give you a more up-to-date recommendation. I didn't bother to change the options since we ran this class last year. So some of these may have better options, but the good news is if they have better options now, then these options will be a little bit cheaper, and they worked just fine last year, so you should be good to go. So prior to meeting, Mary will send this out, but basically it's kind of like a checklist of what to do. So the big thing is you want to make sure that other sound devices that would make noise kind of aren't in the same room as you. This kind of also means that, like, during the summer, make sure that if you have like a wall-mounted AC unit, that you're kind of not near it, because those things have the perfect amount of loud droning noise to drive everyone in the meeting insane. And also make sure that the stuff behind you is stuff that you want other people to see that you have in your house. When you join, this again is just like a checklist. Just make sure that you're using like light in front of you. So if that's not going to work. But basically, if you have light behind you, your face will become exceedingly dark. If you have light in front of you, your face will become lit and easy to see. So just make sure, if there's a window in the room, make sure that you are facing the window instead of facing away from the window. If you're having any issues joining, make sure that you are connected to the right Wi-Fi. Make sure that if you have the ability to plug directly into your internet connection, you do that instead of Wi-Fi. You know, just basically do a final test to make sure the meeting's going to go great. In this slide is kind of items that are under $50 that you can buy to make your meeting experience better. Diffusion is essentially, if you have a sharp light source on your face, it'll create like those really harsh black lines, which may or may not be a look you're going for. Blackout shades will allow you to basically stop a window from kind of sending in all its light if the window is in an inopportune location. And you can always just use an LED desk lamp to make sure that light is in front of you. For a headset, these are basically things that allow you to listen while everyone else in the room isn't also listening to you. So if you're in an environment like the library or like in a study hall or at the airport and you don't want everyone to hear what's going on, headphones are a great option. So the first one is basically a big bulky headphone. I'll just open it up. So it looks like this. It's absolutely massive, but it is really comfy. The next option, for example, is this. So it's kind of a small in-ear headphone model. Again, this is directly connected. These aren't wireless yet, but it does have a little mic attached to it. So those are kind of things that will make your experience better for your meeting if you're in a public place. If you want a better microphone, you can buy a Snowball. This is a blue microphone. It's very inexpensive. It doesn't properly show it, but this is about the size of a softball, so it is fairly large. It will basically allow you to get better sound quality. So primarily if you're kind of in a meeting that's going to be recorded, or if you're a subject matter expert, or if you're running the meeting, sometimes it can be nice if you have a better sounding microphone. It just makes you sound more professional. Video camera, you can't really find a video camera for under 50 that's any good. You can also use your phone as your video camera. There are apps that basically allow you to take your phone and just use it, primarily because your phone already has a really good camera system set up. The next tier pricing is under $200. So we have video cameras that are really nice. So basically this will allow your face to look really good, like if you are the main screen. And we have two options from Logitech and Razer. Earbuds. So this will allow you to be in a public place, but also not have a wire that's connected to your computer or phone in order to listen and talk. And then microphone. Again, if you're like in a studio, or if you are, joining a podcast, or if you want to do like a YouTube video or something like that, it may be really nice to have a good quality microphone to make you sound a little bit better. And then money to burn. In this option, we kind of just go over, the benefits of using an external monitor when you're doing a call, just so you can see two things at once. You can see both the Zoom meeting and information on your screen if you're presenting. We have a link to a higher, more expensive headset. We have some laptop recommendations, not recommendations, but like if you want a laptop today to make your Zoom or conference speaker or conference experience a little bit better, these are some options. Desktop. So desktops aren't as portable, but they're a little bit more powerful. You get a little more bang for your buck. If you're in a single location for a lot of the time, desktops are a good idea to buy, especially for things like Zoom meetings, or for kind of doing presentations or web conferencing. Here is a link to, because occasionally I get asked, here's a link to everything that I use if you don't want to think about it too much, and just say, what does Tim use? If he uses it, it's probably good enough. You can click on that. And then if you are looking for something that we didn't discuss in this quick, like 10-minute rundown, you can go to thewirecutter.com and search. So you can search for something like headphone, or you can search for microphone, or you can search for laptop, and then you can kind of get a review that isn't me, because I'm definitely not the be all end all of knowledge on this. Additional information. These are just best practices for doing Zoom meetings that we have links to, and that's it. Crushed through that in like 10 minutes. Any questions on that, or we've the moosing?
It's overwhelming.
There's a lot of good information there, Tim. Thank you.
What is his last name?
President.
Okay. He's good. I like him. I want you to do that a live Zoom thing later.
Definitely. So we'll definitely do that. And then also I realized that everyone has, at least for me, the most important questions I have after something like this, I generally think about in 10 minutes once it's over. If that happens to you, feel free to give Mary an email, and then she can let me know. And then we can, if it's a question that would add to the slide, then we'll just add it to the slide. So everyone gets the ability to see the question and an answer. But either way, we'll send you an email back with an answer that hopefully works. Or you can always show up tomorrow for the tech drop-in.
Any last questions for Tim before we close up? You've answered everyone's questions, Tim, yet again.
For today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.